office of President of the United States.
For democracy belongs to us all.
A government for our tomorrows.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
We gather because we have chosen hope over fear.
Because this moment is your moment, it belongs to you.
Meet this moment as the United States of America.
Good afternoon and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Amy Gardner. I cover voting issues for the national desk here at the Washington Post. And today I'm pleased to say that I'm joined by the head of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, Director Jen Easterly. I think I just butchered that and you're going to have to help me fix that, Director Easterly. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We're happy to have you with less than 6 days to go until the election.
Yeah, it's great to be here. We just say CISA because it's much easier to say.
I'm with you. Let's just do that. Director Easterly, I wonder if we could start with a really easy question, which is, what is CISA? What do you do? When did election security and election infrastructure become part of your portfolio, and why?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So CISA is the newest agency in the federal government. It may be why people have not heard of us before, but we were stood up 6 years ago in November of 2018 to play two key roles for America. We serve as America's cyber defense agency and the national coordinator for critical infrastructure resilience and security. So our mission is to lead the national effort to understand, manage, and reduce risk to the cyber and physical infrastructure that Americans rely on every hour of every day for water and power and transportation and communication and healthcare and finance, and the infrastructure that Americans use to cast their ballots and to ensure that those ballots are counted as cast. And that really goes to our discussion today, Amy. In 2017, in the aftermath of Russian attempts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, election infrastructure for the first time was designated as critical infrastructure. And CISA was designated as the federal government lead for election infrastructure security. Now, we all know that states run elections, but what we do is we bring together the power of the federal government to provide support to state and local election officials to ensure that they have the information, resources, capabilities, the intelligence to be able to defend their election infrastructure so that Americans can have confidence when they go to the ballot box that their vote will be counted as cast.
Great, thank you for that. I think that's really helpful for our viewers. You've been out and about with a very consistent message these final weeks of this tumultuous presidential campaign season. And that consistent message that you've been putting out there is that our current cyber infrastructure is stronger than ever, that this election is going to be free, fair, safe, secure. Can you make that case to us here? What gives you that extra confidence in light of the competitiveness, in light of the increase in attacks or attempted attacks on our elections? There won't be room for bad actors to get in the door.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. And I have been saying that, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain why. Look, as the lead federal government agency for election infrastructure security, I have spent a lot of the past 3+ years traveling the country on the ground, working with state and local election officials. I know how tirelessly they work to ensure that every one of their citizens' votes are counted as cast. It's why I have such confidence in the security of our election infrastructure and why I can say that our election infrastructure has never been more secure. But why do I say that? Well, first of all, important to understand, voting systems are not connected to the internet. So very hard to hack into a system that is not connected to the internet. Second, there's been a lot of talk about paper ballots. Over 97% of registered voters will cast their ballots in jurisdictions where they will get a paper record that they themselves can verify. And that is in all the battleground states, by the way. 3, over the past several years, election officials have put in place multiple layers of safeguards, cybersecurity, physical access controls, pre-election testing of equipment, and post-election audits to protect election infrastructure from compromise. And then finally, you have to understand that by the Constitution, states run elections, and every state runs elections a little bit differently. As the saying goes, if you've seen one state's election, you have seen one state's election. It's different equipment, different processes, but that decentralized and diverse nature of our election infrastructure actually brings enormous resilience, because it means that a bad actor can't tamper with, manipulate voting equipment at a scale where it could have an impact on the presidential election, certainly not without being detected. And again, that's why I have so much confidence in the security and integrity of our election infrastructure, and why I strongly believe that no matter who you vote for, your vote will be counted as cast.
So you made the important point that election machines, the machines that we vote on or that we scan our ballots into, are not connected to the internet. However, we both know that voter databases in some states are, and other sort of personal and protected information about voters. Is what you're saying that there have been no attacks that have actually penetrated any state systems, and can you say whether there have been attempts, and where and what have they looked like?
Well, I think it goes to the larger question about, even as our infrastructure has never been more secure, the threat environment has never been so complex. So we are looking at cyber threats like ransomware, like distributed denial of service, which is when volumes of data prevent access to a website. We are looking at very real physical threats to election officials of both parties and their families, and to election offices. And we are looking at very real threats from our foreign adversaries, who are more active, using more sophisticated techniques than we've seen in any election cycle. And one of the things that we've been doing is working very closely with our intelligence community colleagues and the FBI to put out updates every few months about what we see in the intelligence, and the intelligence community has declassified that information so the American people can understand what our foreign adversaries are trying to do. And the techniques differ, but they have two main goals. The first is to undermine American confidence in the integrity of our election systems and our democratic institutions more broadly, and to stoke partisan discord, to pit Americans against each other. So while I say it is not possible to technically hack into voting infrastructure in a way that would impact the outcome of the presidential election, we should know that our foreign adversaries are absolutely going to try to make us believe that they have. This is, as opposed to technical hacking, this is the perception hacking. And one of the things we've done with the FBI is put out public service announcement. One of them, related to your question, is the fact that voter databases, folks should know that voter registration databases, some of that data can be sold, some of it is publicly available. And so if you see that information out there, it does not mean that it's been hacked, but our foreign adversaries may try to make us believe that it is. And so, there is a fire hose of information coming at the American people, and a lot of that information is being spread and amplified by our foreign adversaries, who are trying to undermine American confidence in elections. And the most important thing to do is, if there are any questions about whether your vote is protected, how your vote is protected, the best source for that is state and local election officials. They are the subject matter experts that can help you understand how your vote is protected.
Can you give our readers an example of the way in which that fire hose of misinformation is coming in? And can you talk a little bit, you talked about updating the public every few months, but we're, what are we, 6 days out? So, is it increasing? Is the volume going through the roof? And can you give us an example?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen foreign malign adversary activity at a larger scale than in any election cycle. And now they are armed with tools like generative AI, which is helping to exacerbate and to accelerate their ability to do things like create fake personas and fake websites and spew their propaganda in the United States. So we've seen that. In fact, we've also very helpfully seen disruption. So the Department of Justice indicted Russians for essentially funneling nearly $10 million to unwitting influencers on a platform in the US to spew propaganda. We have seen indictments against Iranian actors for attempting to hack into campaigns and leak that information. Just recently, we put a statement out on Friday about a fake Russian video that purported to show ballots being torn up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So we have seen all of this. We've put out information around it, and we will absolutely see more of it in the days over the next 6 days, and likely after November 5th, probably until January 6th, when the Congress finally certifies the election. And we put out a document, the intelligence community put out a document that talks about some of the things that the American people can expect after Election Day. And we know that it's likely going to be a very close race. And just because the polls close, it does not mean that the election is over. And what you see the night of the election, those are unofficial results. If it is very close in the battleground states, they may need to do recounts. They need to do audits. The great news with that is every battleground state has paper records. So there will be a result, but it just might take a few days. But we know into that space of uncertainty, when there is not a specific winner, that's where our foreign adversaries are going to be very active in terms of undermining American confidence and legitimacy, pitting Americans against each other, and maybe even trying to stoke violence in places where it's very close. And so we as Americans need to be on guard. We need to be vigilant to prevent this from happening. We cannot allow our foreign adversaries to have a vote in our democracy.
So that example of the fake video from Pennsylvania, is there anything that you can tell Americans about how to look for that? Or is it more about paying attention to what the official sources of information are telling them? I mean, I feel like people are going to see that video, did see that video, thought it was real. Is there anything that you can tell them that would give them some tools to discern what's real and what's not real?
Well, I mean, the great news on this, Amy, is that when that video came out, the first people that came out and made a statement about it saying it was a fake video was actually the Bucks County Election Board, a nonpartisan board that put out information, said it was fake, and then the government used our forensic capabilities and our analysis in the intelligence and investigative community to do that affirmation, and that's why we put out the statement on Friday night. You know, we have committed to being much more agile in terms of putting out information, calling out things that we see from our foreign adversaries that are specifically designed to undermine confidence in the security and integrity of our elections. But if Americans have any questions, again, the best source to go to is your state and local election officials. And you can see that they have been very active. The statement from Bucks County, the statement from Lancaster County over the weekend related to those fraudulent registrations, the statements coming out of Washington and Oregon. They did a joint press conference in the wake of incendiary devices being placed on ballot boxes. So again, a lot of this is ensuring that the voices of the experts who are on the ground, who are charged with a mission to run elections, that those are being amplified, not the fake voices from our foreign adversaries.
So I was about to ask you about the incendiary devices in the Pacific Northwest, and I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about what Americans should take away from that. Like, that's a pretty devastating thing. That was real. That wasn't fake. Ballots were destroyed, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah.
So I wonder, you know, what does the country do about that? What does the local government or the state government do when ballots are actually destroyed? And what is the message to the American people?
Yeah, thanks. It's really important. So first of all, just so folks know, 2 incendiary devices, one in Portland, Oregon, one in Vancouver, Washington. The first box in Portland had an anti-incendiary device, so all of the ballots were safe except 3 of them. In Washington, there were hundreds that were potentially damaged, and they're dealing with them. And what they are doing is a normal process. If there are any damaged ballots, they are reaching the impacted voters and they are providing them replacement ballots. That is a normal process. And of course, they are working closely with the FBI and with law enforcement to investigate this criminal activity, and that's what it is, and they will find the criminals who did it, and they will be held criminally accountable. I think the larger message here is this is an incredibly complex event. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of election workers, tens of thousands of polling places, some 150 million Americans voting. We know there will be incidents, there will be disruptions. And when those disruptions include criminal behavior, it will be identified, investigated, and those perpetrators will be held criminally accountable. But election officials have been preparing for these elections for years now. They've exercised, they've trained for it, they've prepared against a full range of scenarios. I know this because we've been on the ground running nearly 200 exercises, preparing for a full range of disruption. So these incidents, while disruptive, will not impact the security and integrity of votes being cast and the votes that are cast as being counted. And at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that we are seeing these things, but election officials have prepared for them, and they will continue to be able to deliver safe and secure and free and fair elections. And the last thing I'd say is, as you can imagine, they're also working with their law enforcement and private security to ensure that they are increasing patrols around the drop boxes and making sure they have those cameras in place so that they can deter any other criminal activity.
Thank you for that. I talk to state and local election officials every day across the country, and I have to say that one of the things that I've heard consistently this year, especially as we've gotten closer to the election, is a bit of disappointment in a perception that CISA has been less engaged with them, less forthcoming with information about what types of threats are out there and which have succeeded or not succeeded. In fact, folks are texting me right now asking me to press the question on whether there have been any actual infiltrations, perceiving that you didn't fully answer that question. So I wonder if you could address that criticism and defend the agency or give an answer to those election officials out there who feel that way.
Yeah, happy to. And sorry if I didn't answer your specific question. We have not seen any evidence of foreign adversaries getting into our election infrastructure. And again, I gave the reasons why we think that would be near impossible for any hacks into our voting infrastructure in a way that would impact the outcome of the presidential election. So just to be very clear, if we do see that activity, we will absolutely put out information around it. And to the point about what we've been doing, look, I just have to respectfully disagree. I have been on the ground around the country for 3+ years. We have been working with state and local election officials across the country of both parties. In fact, we have surged more resources in more jurisdictions than ever before. We hired 10 amazing election security advisors who are former election officials. They're around the country to provide tailored support at the state and local level. Since the beginning of the election cycle, we provided over 1,200 physical security assessments, over 700 cybersecurity assessments, hundreds of trainings on things like recognizing phishing, recognizing generative AI, on active shooter training, on de-escalation techniques. We've run nearly 200 exercises to include our national tabletop the vote. And we have fully dedicated to prioritizing this mission. And I personally just got back from spending time with secretaries of state in Nebraska, in Iowa, in Kansas, in South Dakota, in Missouri. I was just up with Dave Scanlon up in New Hampshire visiting polling places. I was out with Phil McGrain out in Idaho. We are fully into this mission. and we have our best people on it. And that's why we're about to set up our elections operation room to bring in all of our partners so that we can monitor what's happening, that we can be there to support election officials if they need us. Again, we are a voluntary agency who have surged more resources than ever at this, and we stand ready to continue to support state and local election officials who we recognize are on the front lines of defending our democracy, running and managing and securing our election infrastructure.
My God, you exhausted me just hearing that itinerary that you've just completed across the country. Thank you for that answer. And actually, this is a good opportunity to ask another question I have here, which is I wonder if it's possible, assuming it's not, sort of protected information, for you to give an example of the kind of thing that has been done at the state level, perhaps at CISA's recommendation, perhaps on their own, that does protect the infrastructure. You talked about how we're more protected than ever. There haven't been any breaches yet. What's an example of something that was done, say, with voter registration databases, I guess is a good example, but if you have a better one, please, of something that's been hardened or where you feel so confident that what you've done protects it?
Yeah, I mean, for voter registration databases, protecting that data really goes to kind of the bread and butter of what we preach from cybersecurity, things like ensuring that the software that you're using is updated regularly, that you have multi-factor authentication in place, that you have passwords that are protected with complex, unique passwords and a password manager, that anybody who is working in an election office on these systems is trained to recognize and report phishing. So that's some of the basic stuff, and even implementing things like two-step, as I mentioned, multi-factor authentication makes a difference. But let me talk to you about another example, because different from 2020, one of the big things that election officials have told us that they've been really concerned about are physical threats. Now, these are physical threats of harassment, of swatting, of bullying, hazardous material, in mailed-in ballots, and threats to election officials of both parties and their families. And all of this is largely stemming from unfounded claims that the 2020 election was rigged. And I just need to say up front, everybody, I think, listening should understand that election officials are not faceless bureaucrats. They're our friends, they're our neighbors, they're family members, they're folks we see in the community every single day. They're not doing this for pay or for glory. They're doing it because they believe it's the right thing to do to serve our democracy, and they certainly deserve to be safe. And so one of the things that we've been asked to do over the past 2 years are safe assessments, that's security at first entry at some of the election offices. And so we will go in with physical security experts. We will help them understand improvements that need to be made to ensure the physical security of the building. Very unfortunately, in some places around the country, you look at these election offices and they have bulletproof glass, there are panic buttons, there are some flak jackets, there are high security places because of some of those threats. And we've gone in and made these recommendations, and they have implemented many of them. I visited places out in Maryland, places out in Las Vegas, where they've put these things in place, and they've been able to use some of the grant money that's provided. There's been 3% of the Homeland Security grant funding that's been dedicated to election officials from a cybersecurity perspective. We have state and local cyber grant programs. So the assessments that we've done have been tailored for them to be able to make improvements specifically using some of this grant funding coming from the Department of Homeland Security.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, we're getting close to our time. I want to ask one final question, which is, what is your plan should one of the candidates not accept the result after Tuesday? Will there be a statement similar to the one that I believe Chris Krebs issued 4 years ago, declaring that the election had been safe and secure? And can you give us a little bit more information about what the plan is for the time frame between Election Day and Inauguration Day?
Yeah, so there will absolutely be a statement. I made a statement in 2022. I expect that statement to say that it has been a safe and secure election, but I don't want to prejudge that. Obviously, we're going to wait until we see what happens on Election Day. But again, I am very confident in the security of our election infrastructure and the fact that election officials are prepared to meet this moment for America. But your question is a very good one, because we know that it could be very close in those battleground states, and there could be there could be potential violence in the days after elections if people see that the candidate that they thought won didn't actually win, just given that it could be so close and there may need to be audits and recounts. And so, you know, we are prepared to continue to provide support to state and local election officials. But if you speak to, and I heard you say you do, speak to chief election officials and local election officials around the country, you know that they've been working very closely with local law enforcement to ensure that if there are any issues around that lead to violence or protests similar to we saw in 2020, then they are prepared to be able to deal with that. And I know that all of the governors in the various states are prepared if there are any issues around that. And then certainly the Department of Homeland Security has made January 6th, where the vote will be certified by the Congress, a high security, what's called a Tier 1 event, to ensure that there will be security in place. But my strong hope is that when the winner of the election is announced, Americans will come together in a united way to accept that result and recognize that, you know, protecting and preserving our democracy and ensuring a peaceful transfer of power is really central to preserving our democracy. And so my hope is it will be a safe and secure election, and we will manage the aftermath of it and ensure that Americans across the country are safe and secure, and that we have that peaceful transfer of power.
That is an outstanding place to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Director Jen Easterly of CISA. It was great to have you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Amy.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. For more of our reporting and our Washington Post Live events, please go to WashingtonPostLive.com and subscribe for more wonderful content and information.